Welcome to Your Number Man, where we share financial strategies, business insights, and inspiring stories to help you navigate a successful business. I am your host, Johan Zanik, and my goal is to help you achieve a bigger life in business. Well, hello again, and today we are joined with Angelie Balagosa. And we're going to talk everything to do about talent outsourcing and the magnificent world out there and all the opportunities and how it works. And it's going to be a great informative podcast today. Just a bit of a background on Angelie. She was born and raised in the Philippines and migrated in Australia in 2016. So I'm 10 years ahead of you. And your first few years in Australia, you worked with top-tier firm Commonwealth as a business and change analyst. And later years, then Angelie co-founded Hitch VA, and it's now Hitch Tech Talent Outsourcing, with her brother who ran it then from Singapore. And he started with that in 2019, and Angelie, she got on the boat a few years later. And it started as a virtual assistant agency, but it evolved into high-tech talent outsourcing, like I mentioned, and it reflects the deep expertise in technology outsourcing and recruitment. So today she connects with high-performing professionals and innovative Australian businesses. Angelie, very welcome to Your Number Man.
Thank you for having me, Johan.
All right, and how's it all here in the studio? It's okay to hear your voice in the earphones, and
it's okay now. I've gotten used to it.
You're all good now. All right. Okay. Well, let's start off with your journey. What led you from growing up in the Philippines to launching an outsourcing company in Australia?
Okay. I have an aunt who's my mother's older sister. She married an Adelaide man 30 or 40 years ago. So they settled in Adelaide, but growing up, they would visit the Philippines regularly. So growing up, I'm aware about Australia as a country, but I have no idea what it is like. All that I know is that it's different. So fast forward, I went to uni and married. And then my husband's cousin was sponsored by a company in Sydney. So he worked in Sydney, and then we became more interested about moving to Australia, especially after we learned that there was a direct pathway for us to become permanent residents because of my profession as a business analyst. So we took that path. We visited Australia for a holiday with other family members. We landed in Adelaide. We absolutely loved it. We moved up to Melbourne and then Sydney. And then in the same year, in 2016, our visa was granted. It was sponsored by New South Wales. We stayed there for nearly 5 years and then eventually moved to Adelaide. So this is when the series of events took place that led me into the business. So stay with me.
Yeah. Okay.
Before we moved to Adelaide, I was on maternity leave with my second child. I was very fortunate because my employer back then, where I had a recruitment role, allowed me to be based in Adelaide, even if we had no office in Adelaide. So we moved, and the plan was to put my 5-month-old child into childcare, and I returned to work. But that didn't go as planned because she was always sick. And I had a discussion with my manager, and we ultimately decided that it was best that I leave the role to take care of my child. And then my brother in Singapore offered some consulting work for me in one of his businesses. So fast forward in 2023, we expanded in Australia.
All right, and here you are, and that's a bit of a great background, Angelie. So obviously being into business analytics as well, and now you are dealing with the outsourcing with people in a high tech, because you do understand a lot about the tech industry as well, I would assume.
I do, yes. I do have an understanding of the talent and the industry landscape, which puts me in a very good position, I suppose, because of that understanding.
Okay, well, that's great. And you've, but in the beginning it was Hitch VA, which I believe the VA stands for Virtual Assistants, and it moved into high-tech talent. So that difference came from the fact that you realize there is a real need for high tech talent in Australia.
Absolutely. So, before I go into that, allow me to take a step back for the interest of our listeners who have no idea what outsourcing is.
That's a good, yeah, great.
So, outsourcing takes many forms, and the most common forms are one, business process outsourcing, which we are all exposed to. For example, the contact centers of our energy providers are based offshore, and there is manufacturing outsourcing. So, car makers, they outsource the manufacturing of some of the car parts. They don't manufacture it in house. There's also IT outsourcing. And then there is professional outsourcing. So, for example, you engage an accountant to help you with your bookkeeping and taxation advice. Now, talent outsourcing is a form of business process outsourcing. That's our business. And so, what it means is that employers or companies engage us, they delegate their recruitment function to us because either they don't have a capacity in house to conduct those activities or they have specific requirements that could not be fulfilled in house. How it evolved was that it's kind of a long story because my brother did not put a lot of thought into the business. It was an accidental business when he was in Singapore. He has a different business, but he got a tap on the shoulder because they knew that he was Filipino. He was asked if he could recommend a few people to work for a Singaporean firm. And so he did that. He just made some connections. And then the next thing he knew, it spread through word of mouth and he saw the potential in it. So he went on and made those connections. And then when we expanded in Australia, I spent a bit of time understanding what the market is, what its needs are, had dozens and hundreds of conversations with business owners, and we did a proper market research and the opportunities here in Australia as well.
Yeah.
And we gathered that tech talent is one, in shortage in Australia, two, they have very high salaries, which many business owners could not afford. And three, there's a real opportunity because it's playing by my strengths. You know, sometimes how other people have to point it out to you that that's your strength and you don't see it yourself. So it's a product of playing to one's strengths and addressing the opportunity that we see here in Australia.
100%. Okay. That's, yeah, thanks for that as well. So the reason why you so gladly accepted my invitation is to, it's also to inspire business owners and to talk to business owners, but actually explain to them that these opportunities do exist, and it's all to do with, creating efficiencies in your business, and to focus on the core business of your, the core items in your business. And perhaps because a lot of people think, okay, I just don't want to go and be hassled with all the outsourcing and all the the recruitment issues myself. I'd rather get somebody else to help me, and that is where a person like you come in, I would assume. So so obviously cash flow is one of the biggest problems I see for small business, but then also the challenges is staffing. It's a big problem. Now, how can, in specifically, if, and I don't want to bag anything between towards the recruitment agencies in Australia, recruiting Australians, because we are Australia, but where does outsourcing specifically fit in, or offshore outsourcing?
That's a great question. So it's a perfect storm.
It's a long one, but anyway. Yeah.
It's a perfect storm right here in Australia at the moment for small businesses because one, there's very low unemployment rate, so not many people are looking for jobs at the moment. Two, there's rising costs of living and also to conduct business. And three, there are talent shortages. Now, I want to make it clear that talent outsourcing or outsourcing in general shouldn't be taken as a silver bullet. And it shouldn't be the only option, but rather as one of the myriad options that businesses have to consider, and they have to make a careful decision whether it's right for them. If they assess that it's the right solution for them, how it can help is it hits two birds with one stone. So when you outsource, especially to an offshore market, it allows you to access a wider talent pool. And I'll explain that in a bit in terms of numbers, which I know that you love.
Great. Yeah.
And the second thing is because if you're tapping into a talent market with significantly lower labor costs, it assists you in managing your finances because it lowers your expenditures, right? Now, let's put that into perspective. And I'll use the Philippines because it's the market that I know of most. And I suspect that other markets like India, Vietnam, and Indonesia and Malaysia, they have similar positions. So in Australia, the population as of 2024 September is 27.3 million. In the Philippines, the projection for July 2025 is 115 million. Now, out of that population, at the moment, there's around 41 million that's between the age of 25 to 55 years old. Now, that is the potential, the size of the potential talent market that you're tapping into. And that's 1.5 times the entire population of Australia.
My goodness.
That's what we're talking about, a wider talent pool. In terms of salaries, the minimum hourly wage in Australia is $24. The minimum daily wage in the Philippines, could you make a guess, Johan?
$30?
12 to 19 a day, dollars a day.
Goodness.
So the minimum daily wage in the Philippines is less than the minimum hourly wage in Australia. Cost of living in the Philippines, because it would vary with which city or province you reside in and whether you live with your parents or not. It can range from 600 to 1,000. I'm speaking about Australian dollars, $600 to $1,000 a month per person. In Australia, it would be 3 or 4 times that figure.
So when you say living cost, that means you got to eat, you got a house, you got to take care of your medicals,
Clothing,
transportation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can get by for about $600 to $700 in Philippines.
If you live with your parents, perhaps, or with a family member.
Yeah, but I mean that includes me paying my share part of the rent or whatever the case might be.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the average cost of living.
Yeah, and I guess in Australia, probably you won't get away with under $3,000 or $2,500 almost.
So in Adelaide, what I did was, when I gathered these figures, was
Yeah.
I went to the education service and I got an estimate of what the cost of living would be like for a student to study here in Adelaide, and the figure I came up with was $800 a week average.
Yep. Yeah, and it's probably going up as we talk.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of salaries, because this is where it will all boil down to.
Yep.
Let's just use the example of a software engineer, a graduate software engineer, so fresh out of uni, $60,000 to $80,000 in salary alone without super a year. For an experienced hire, say a mid or senior level software engineer, $100,000 to $150,000 a year in salary. In the Philippines, you could get a comparable, not the exact same skill, but a comparable skill for 30 to 60% of that. Now, the range of 30 to 60% is it depends if you would engage them directly or if you would have an intermediary agency in between the two of you.
Okay. That's fantastic. It's all numbers, and I'm glad you've mentioned, because it is a number show as well, and it's basically a no-brainer. I mean, it does make so much sense. We obviously got to you got to look at your own backyard first here in Australia, but you also got to look in your business. You want to present a good product for your client, a product or a service for your client, and hence you got to make sure that you are efficient, that you are profitable and sustainable. The problem that I would think a lot of small businesses would be the fact that, okay, so they're going to go outsourcing remote as well, but they would struggle, and this is where you, Angelique, as the agent, comes in, because they would struggle about with the communication the whole time. Would this person understand Australian culture, the way we think, systems, processes, procedures? Is that a big problem? Because that's what I go to a person like you. So how can you interface then to make sure that, the service that I, as an Australian business owner, is exactly the product I'm going to get from either hiring through a recruitment agency here or through you, it can be exactly the same or even better perhaps.
Yes, so that's a really good point,
Yeah.
because it's hard, but it's not that hard. So before you go on outsourcing and you make a decision whether you want to go through an intermediary agency or you want to do it yourself, because it's absolutely possible to do it yourself, you have to be first clear with yourself. One, what is your risk appetite? And two, what resources can you realistically allocate to make it work? And resources, I mean time, effort, and your budget.
Yeah. Sorry, when you said risk appetite, you mean you, in terms of you want to employ people and you sometimes take a chance on people, so your risk is probably more if you employ from here, because it's going to be more, and it's going to be it could be a longer process, and it could be an expensive process. Am I right?
On the flip
I
side,
digress now, but
the clients that I speak to see outsourcing as a higher risk, but you've also got a point where some business owners would see local hiring as a risk because of the
Yeah.
rigid industrial regulations that we have. So that will come into play.
Okay.
Also, just be mindful that when you hire someone directly, there was a recent landmark ruling by the Fair Work Commission just September of last year, where, and we are digressing now, but I think it's important to discuss it here, is that there was a Filipina. She was not employed, but she was contracted directly by a legal company based in Queensland. And the contract was an independent contractor. And then her complaint was that she was unfairly dismissed. So she filed a complaint with the Fair Work Commission. So the Fair Work Commission looked at the nature of the relationship, of the engagement, and they saw that that it satisfied many factors that would constitute an employer-employee relationship, and that therefore that outsourced worker would is considered as an employee of the Australian company, even if she was based in the Philippines. So I think that sets the message to many businesses to be mindful about those subtleties. And also, when you are engaging someone from offshore, you're already saving at least 50% of the cost.
Yeah.
Don't be stingy, right?
Yeah.
And be realistic with your expectations, and just be humane, Johan.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, the things that you would do to make that hire successful, whether it's offshore or onshore, there's no huge difference. There really is no difference. Now, going back to your question about the English barrier,
Yeah.
that just on that point, the Philippines and India, which are the most common markets for outsourcing, English is an official language for both. So in the Philippines, we speak Tagalog and more than, I think, 100 dialects. But because of the diversity of those dialects, the
Yeah.
government and the schools teach on English. So when I was studying in the Philippines, we were taught in English language, and we only had one subject which was taught in our mother tongue. So English is a widely spoken language in the Philippines. Now, if a business is thinking of outsourcing to a non-English speaking country, that's a very valid reason to be skeptical.
Okay. Yep.
And that is when I would suggest having a middle person to bridge that and to ensure that the outcomes would be as per expectations.
Yeah. So what you're saying, it's language is. I mean, obviously the accents. Well, I've got an accent. You've got an accent. A lot of people's got different accent. That is sometimes it's not a problem. And specifically when we talk about developers and high tech jobs as well, it's the product that you can deliver, which the end of the day, that is what you want to what you want to see from the service, and it can be exactly so. And it's all about how good your specialization is, what you actually do need from your specification. If one of your clients contact you and say they need somebody that's a programmer in Oracle, for that matter. I don't know if you work with a program like that, for instance, but you're going to need a detailed brief. They really got to understand what they're asking. You got to understand what you're going to look for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's like building a house, right? How good your plan is will determine how good the quality of the house is. So with every engagement that we have, we start off with that plan, with that role outline, and we sit down with the business owner. What exactly does this role look like? What are the skills that you are looking for? What are the responsibilities that will be delegated to this person? And what is the selection criteria, the primary selection criteria that we will look for, so that we know that we are endorsing high quality candidates to you. So there's a lot of effort put into the early stages of that process.
I guess so. And it's almost, I'm just thinking about sometimes you're talking to a builder in Australia, you want to build a pergola or something. And go, it'll be right, mate. But the brief is sometimes, it's just, you sometimes sit in a pub and you do a couple of drawings. And then when it's finished, you say, no, that's not what I've asked for. Yeah, sure it is, mate. So I guess it's almost in a better situation. So you are forced to make sure that the specifications we are both clear on the specifications, what needs, and the cost as well, the fees involved. Everybody knows what the fees involved would be as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Because sometimes you sit in a pub and you discuss it with I'm not bagging any builder. I've got great friends as builders, and I think they're great people. But sometimes it is. Sometimes you sit down and you make a bit of a drawing. Oh yeah, about we can do it for about 15 grand, and you
mates rates,
and then you get it right for 25. So, oh well, yeah. Sorry, I had to run a few more errands and that kind of stuff. So it is about so just to get clear, it is about, and you are very, people in your industry is very adamant on it that you need clear specifications.
Yes.
Am I right?
Absolutely, because otherwise we wouldn't know if we're targeting the right people, if we're looking for the right people, and it's not good use of anyone's time.
Yes, and it brings it back to my favorite topic in business as well, which I sometimes say is, don't bark up the wrong tree.
Yes, absolutely.
If you know what you want, then you can make a budget to suit where you are going towards. So so all your numbers will eventually fall in line. But if you're not sure, like I say, if you're not sure where you're going, any road will take you there.
Correct. No wind is helpful.
No wind, Seneca, isn't it? Yeah, that's correct. Anyway, so that's great. But okay, there's a lot of now. Our listeners on this show is probably more small business type owners and entrepreneurs, and now, for instance, I'm running a small team, but I'm thinking about outsourcing. So what would your advice be for a business owner thinking about hiring a remote team member for the first time?
There's a few things, and we've mentioned those earlier. So one is, be really clear with what you want for the role to look like. So don't treat it differently to hiring locally. The same things that you would do when you're about to hire someone onshore would be the same things that you need to do when you hire someone offshore, or even a little bit more stringent, just because of the remote layer that comes into play. What does the role look like? What does the ideal person who will be successful in the role look like? Do you have capacity to train? Because even if you have the best person placed in your team, but if you don't train them properly, and it takes at least 8 hours a week to train up someone, and at least 3 months for a person to be independent and productive, producing their own outcomes with very minimal supervision. So are you prepared? Is the business prepared to support that, to make it successful?
Okay, so what you're saying is, if I'm employing a person, whether I'm employing from local talent here or employing through a company like yours, there's always going to be training available, and people might have the stance to say, Angelie, you promised me you're going to give me a person that knows exactly what's going on. That's the wrong outlook, because there's always every business is different, although we've all got the same kind of skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're a welder for this company, a welder for another company, it's still, you're a welder, but you still got to learn how we do things in that specific company.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And also there are those business specific, that's what we call business specific training, and also the institutional knowledge, right? The knowledge that is unique to your business. Not necessarily it will have a direct impact on how the outcome is produced, but it will just give more context that will allow the person to deliver the outcomes in the best way that they could, because they have that understanding of the business beyond their own role.
Yes. So I'm just I'm just thinking as well, and I think it was Richard Branson who said, is, educate your people so good that I can leave, but treat them so good that I won't leave.
Correct.
Okay. And so now I'm saying, okay, so every business is different, but I would like to have a certain culture in my business. People come around. We have perhaps team meetings every morning. When I say team meeting, I'm not talking about Microsoft. We're sitting standing around the coffee machine or whatever every morning, and we go. How do you bridge that gap? For instance, if somebody is part of the team, but not really part of the team. They're not going to talk about this bloke in Singapore. They want to talk about Dick or Paul or Mary, as if it's part of the team. There's that sort of like interconnection that you need to get that person to feel part of the same team.
Yes, absolutely. And I just remember a client who asked the same thing, because they have a weekly meeting, say every Thursday, every morning. And she said, how can this person join us? There is technology. So instead of you going to next to the coffee machine, you could probably grab your coffee first, sit in a room and put on Microsoft Teams or Zoom and have the person join you. And also it starts with a mindset shift, Johan. When you outsource someone, treat it as a long part of your long-term strategy, not just as a once-off, or the person will be here for 3 months, because the amount of mindset shift that you have to go through won't pay it off in 3 months. It has to be longer than that, because it's an investment. And if you're not prepared to do that, if your team members are not prepared to do that, then I would challenge you to really think if outsourcing is the right model for you.
Okay, that's great. That answered that questions as well. And the other question is, so what? Now I'm coming back to you and your business. What do you believe you doing right, and other people and other agents perhaps, and feel free to to say I'm the best, or you're the best. What competitive advantage do you actually give to the market for what you're doing? What is it that niche in the market people need to, if they're looking for something, you are the person, your business?
That's a really good question, and you make me think hard on that. Probably I'll start with sharing the feedback that our clients give to us. All of our clients say that they really like the rigorous process, but we make it simple for them. So they would say that if they were to hire someone on shore, they would not do it differently than how we have done it. But we make it so simple for them, such that we do most of the legwork. It's a concierge type service. We do most of the legwork, and we only require limited effort from them, because we know that they are busy. But we make sure that they maintain control and they have influence of the entire process, and we're just executing that process through our framework. I'm Adelaide based. I've spoken to a recent client where they were shopping around, and they were quite disappointed because I think 2 of the other competitors they looked for were all the meetings were virtual, and you know how Adelaide loves in-person
Yeah,
connections.
we love it. Yeah, yeah.
And so when they learned that I'm based in Adelaide and I could meet them for a coffee,
Where were the other people? Were they in Melbourne or Sydney, or were they actually?
Queensland
Oh,
and
right.
Sydney.
Still in the country, but not local. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like to go and have a chat at a person's office, or even just go and grab a coffee sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other two
Yeah.
things is, and I'm going to show you a Venn diagram just now.
Okay. We'll have to put a.
I
Well, we can save it.
I'm
Next week we're going to have a YouTube video. We can perhaps put that on a YouTube video as well. Yeah.
so I'm in a very unique position
But
because
explain us this diagram, or
yes.
okay, you still, it's your intro to the diagram. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so
Okay.
I'm in a very unique position because, as you know, I was born and raised in the Philippines, but I'm now an Australian citizen living in Australia. So I sit right in the middle of those two cultures.
Mm.
And in the work that I do, I have a real understanding of both cultures, and I can bridge that gap, the cultural gap.
Yes.
So when I am able to explain to our clients that Filipinos are typically not assertive communicators, but this is what you can do to get meaningful input and feedback from them. On the other hand, I can say to the talent that we place that Australians are generally like this. They like to get your input. They value your input, and so they would ask you. So don't be embarrassed if they ask too many questions. Things like that, little things that facilitate integration of the talent and of the business. The other thing that came to light just recently is my position in the generational group. So I'm a millennial or Gen Y, and I sit right in the middle
Okay.
between the baby boomers and Gen X, which would represent our client group, and the Gen Y, myself, and the Gen Z, which
Oh, okay.
represent
You've lost me now with all the generations. I know I'm not a baby boomer, but I'm but I'm
maybe,
probably on the top end of
or
the
a Gen X.
the Gen X. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
there's the baby boomers.
Yeah. And
This
they
is in ascending order: baby
and
boomers,
then the Gen
Gen
X.
X, Y, or the millennials, and then the Z,
This is
and then the
Z.
babies now are called Alpha
Oh
generation.
my goodness.
So I'm right in the middle.
Yeah.
So my client group are in the babies, boomer, and Gen X,
Yes.
but the talents that we place are on the other end, the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs. So that means that I can relate to either sides, and I can bridge that generational gap as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that is great. You've got that because the understanding of what's the Aussie culture, Filipino culture, as well as that generational gap as well. And you are local.
Yes.
That's great. And then, so what is what? How does a business model in general work for talent outsourcing? High tech talent outsourcing, for that matter. I mean, it's not a question we don't bill. I say, okay, I need a person. I need this job done for the next 3 months, and I'm happy to pay $50 an hour for that matter, or blah blah, whatever the case might be. And you just make sure, Angelie, I don't care who you hire, you just make sure it happens. That's not your business model, is it?
No, that would be project outsourcing.
Okay.
Okay. So talent outsourcing, ours is we provide support on the recruitment process and even up to the onboarding and employee relations. So how the process looks like is it's a 4-stage process. So it begins with the needs assessment where I meet with the business owner and understand what the business needs are and whether we could provide the right solution. Because there are cases when we would say we could not take you on as a client because there are certain parameters that we need to meet, but we can help you this way. So just give them some input and advice. Now, and in that process as well, we are very transparent with our terms of engagement. So we don't leave it until the near end of the process. We say at these early stages, this is how engaging us will look like. If you're agreeable to all this, then let's draw up that role outline that we spoke about. So the role brief. And then we take that into the next stage, which is the recruitment and selection. So that means us sourcing the candidates that are suitable for the role and presenting the top ones to the client so that the client can select and handpick who they'd like to
Yep.
interview them, and then ultimately pick the successful hire. So the client has absolute control of the selection process. When a successful hire is identified, we then move on to drawing up an onboarding plan. So how does the first 6 months look like? What are the goals that we need to meet? And then I check in with the clients on a monthly basis to go back to those roles and measure the outcomes. And then after the 6 months time, after the 6 month period, we then plan out the next 12 months. So there is a long-term prospect in it, not just a short-term one, because at the end of the day, we'd love for the talent to feel successful in the role, that they're doing well, because that lifts morale and that allows them to
Yeah.
give their best work. And it also helps the client, because if the talent is doing what the client is expected to do, the client is produce the outcomes that it's aiming for. So it goes both ways. And then there is that ongoing support throughout the lifetime of the placement. So unlike recruitment agencies here, typically they provide a 3-month guarantee. But with us, we call it a lifetime talent guarantee. For as long as the talent we place is with you and you engage us, we provide that support. So there are cases when a talent will move on. We replace the talent at no additional cost. We go through the same process that we go through in the beginning to find that right fit. Or if the talent is not performing as expected, we provide intervention. If the intervention does not work, then we could also provide a replacement, again, at no extra cost.
That's right. And do you usually talk with the client? Are you collaborating a lot with the client in the first few months, probably?
Yes,
Yeah,
certainly.
they can say, oh man, this Anthony in the corner, he's not really, he's not really cutting the mustard. And you have to go back to Anthony and have a chat with him.
Absolutely.
Anthony is our editor. He's sitting in a corner. I just used him as he's not really sitting. He's sitting in the other side of the world, for that matter. So Anthony's on the other side of the world, but he's not cutting the mustard. But it's now your job to go and make sure that he understands. So you've actually got it's a pretty big job. You got to understand that specific client's culture as well, and their team setup as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's why it makes a huge difference when you're able to meet the client in person and perhaps in their office or workshop, because you get a glimpse of the broader business and not just the unit that the person will be deployed to. So it helps a lot. And in that sense, we act as a safety net for both the client and for the talent, because sometimes the talent is expecting this level of treatment with the client, and client can sometimes, act naughty or silly.
Yeah. All right. Now I think you've answered a lot of questions. The other thing that I was wondering, is there, because we know we get Fair Work Australia, and I know business owners, I know a lot of people, business owners, when I heard Fair Work, they get all grumpy.
I know.
So we get Fair Work here as I don't know what you call it, an ombudsman or whatever. Is there a body in Australia that between, like Fair Works, but if you're using talent outsourcing, that sort of like come in between, if there's a bit of beef between you and a client or whatever, people that's got to sort it out, like Fair Works, is there?
No, unfortunately, there's not. And I'd be happy if there will be a regulatory body so that, it will lift the standards of outsourcing companies. That's how I look at it. But at this stage, there's only ASIC that governs the companies.
Okay, so there is probably, according to you, a bit of a gap in the market. Well, I don't know, it's not a gap, and not we can get business ideas starting this, because it's probably somebody from the government that's going to initiate this as well. Yeah, and just I'm not going to let the state tax office or the ATO listen too hard on this question. Yeah, but what do I do with payroll tax, and what is the regulations? Do I get away with payroll tax if I employ somebody offshore?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because how it would typically...
I shouldn't have mentioned it now.
Yes. But that's a really good point, Johan. So I have 2 points to address that. So Yes, you don't have to pay as a company payroll tax because the work is not performed here in Australia. The work is performed outside of Australia. But in saying that, if it is determined that your business has a permanent operations outside of Australia, then you may be liable to pay tax in that foreign country's government. The second thing is if you would engage an intermediary agency, typically how it would work is there is a contractor agreement. So you are paying the agency as a contractor, and so the agency will be taxed for its income out of the engagement, but not payroll tax.
Okay.
So the ATO will still have its fair share.
The ATO or Service SA, whoever regulates, because it's regulated by the state.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, yeah, we've actually time flies when we're talking about teams and skills and talent, isn't it? Hey, did we get to your the diagram, which we're going to discuss it in the
Yes.
in the YouTube video, perhaps quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't look flashy though. I just made it up.
Okay, it's all right. Perhaps we can, perhaps you can put it in the footnotes here. So if people want to get hold of you, mind you, before I'm going to get into that, one more question. So you are a business owner yourself, a small business owner, and I know that I've seen you around at the Polaris Business Center as well. But what advice, and no, not from a business owner's point of view, what advice would you give people out there that want to go and start their own business? What if you get one piece of advice for small business owners or possible people thinking about starting a small business?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Have you heard of the book The E-Myth by Michael Gerber?
Oh, yeah.
I would give them that advice because that will give them hundreds of other advice.
Yes.
So, and I've given the same advice to a friend who's based in Sydney. She is looking at starting her own business. So I shared with her the book The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Michael Gerber, that's
Or
right.
Gerber. Because it is such an eye-opening book that breaks down what is the difference between working, why you leave your work to start your own business, and what's going on around your head that as the business owner, you wouldn't even know is happening.
Yeah, go and read it. And you are actually, it's not the first person that mentioned that to me. I've asked people, a lot of people do mention that book by Michael Gerber. So people go out and have a look at that book. What I like from that book is where the author talks about, you're the entrepreneur in the business, so you want to grow the business. You've got new ideas, but like all entrepreneurs, we're a little bit of a scatter. We're a bit of a scatterbrain as well. Then you got to be the manager.
Yes.
You got to manage everything, and then you're also the technician. So you want to do everything yourself. But now you are on your own, so you got to be all and that is perhaps where it can help, because now you got to start writing 3 different job descriptions for yourself. Me as the entrepreneur, as the managing, and then also the person that actually doing the skills. Yeah. And then later, and that's actually a great platform for growing and for scaling your business later. For now, for instance, I might say, all right, I'm starting my own software development business, but I like to be more entrepreneurial, thinking about new ideas, and I'll handle the management. But here's my job description I wrote for myself a couple of years ago. I'm just going to update it or send it through ChatGPT or whatever and have a chat with Angelie, and she can find me somebody for that matter. So that's a bit of a great segue into a little bit of a boost, the last one for outsourcing. Angelie, it's been a pleasure having you here in the great studio with us today. Just a note, we will also next week, as you would know, that I would like to alter my podcast with a bit of a YouTube snippet. I don't know if a lot of you follow me on the YouTube channel as well. The snippets where it's more me talking about something technical in terms of the numbers. I'm going to change it up a little bit for next week. So Angelie's actually going to join me next week on a YouTube, and we're just going to sit around, have a quick snippet for about 5 to 6 minutes, and we're going to talk about it. And she might even explain quickly about a diagram, or we'll put a photo, or we'll put an image of the diagram.
I look forward to that.
On it as well. Now, as I mentioned before, we did come in contact with each other as well at Polaris, and through mutual business associations as well. So just thanks a lot. Polaris is helping a little bit with funding for the show, so they're sort of one of my sponsors. It's a great place if you're in South Australia. They're based in Mawson Lakes, and they are sponsored by the City of Salisbury. So please give Polaris a call if you need help with any kind of business help as well. Obviously, you can call me or you can call Angelie. There's a lot of people out there as well. But Polaris is perhaps a good place as well because they help with the business fundamentals. And just a quick shout out for Polaris. We are done for this podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks again for coming in.
You're welcome. Right on time.
Right on time. All right, that's a wrap for today. Johan Zanik, and I'm signing off as your number man. Cheers.